Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Global. We'll get you top stories from India and the region. I'm Tanvi Taneja, and for news from the rest of the world, I'm joined by my colleague from Washington DC, Benji Haya. Good to have you with us, Benji.
Good morning, Tanvi. 10 a.m. in Washington, D.C., 3 in the afternoon across Central Europe. And in the next 30 minutes, America waking up to a stark reality. A rambling, oftentimes incoherent performance from Joe Biden on the debate stage last night, totally eclipsing Donald Trump's outrageous falsehoods. We'll bring you all the reaction from here. First, back to you.
Voters hold high hopes as Iran selects its next president. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei urges voters for maximum people's participation. Chinese President Xi Jinping calls for building bridges in the global economy as Beijing grapples with trade disputes and diplomatic frictions with its partners. US President Joe Biden and his rival Donald Trump's lackluster debate performances fail to impress viewers worldwide. Biden's shaky performance alarms Democrats, raises questions on his age again. And astronauts Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore stuck in space. NASA orders astronauts to take shelter in Boeing's Starliner spacecraft with no new return date announced so far. Up first, news from Asia. Iran is voting for a new president on Friday in the shadow of a regional escalating conflict, a crackdown at home and mounting international sanctions over its fast advancing nuclear program. Polls in Tehran were necessitated following the death of Ibrahim Raisi in a helicopter crash. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei cast the first ballot in the country and called for the unity of Iranian people during the elections.
The longevity, stability, reputation and honor of the Islamic Republic depends on the people's participation.
The voters are choosing from a tightly controlled group of 4 candidates, supposedly loyal to the Supreme Leader. There is hardline diplomat Saeed Jalili, Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Kalibaf, and the sole cleric vying for Iran's presidency, Mustafa Por Mohammadi. Then there is the reformist candidate, Masoud Pezeshkian, who has aligned himself with those seeking a return to the 2015 nuclear deal with world powers. A runoff between the top 2 contenders will be held if no candidate is able to get over 50% of votes. While the poll is unlikely to bring a major shift in the Islamic Republic's policies, the outcome could influence the succession to Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. So as voters cast their ballots in Iran's presidential election, some shared their thoughts on the election at a time of growing public frustration and Western pressure.
The young generation has requests on economic, cultural and social issues. Implementing these requests isn't difficult, but there is a lack of attention towards them, particularly towards the youth.
I expect the elected president to fulfill his promises with effort. However, this won't happen without the support of the entire society.
I expect the next president to deliver diplomatic improvement between our country and Egypt. By doing so, we can establish ourselves as a regional hegemon. My other request is definitely to ensure all people in Iran, regardless of ethnicity or religion, are able to act freely.
Iranians living in Syria and the UAE also cast their votes on Friday for Iran's 14th presidential election. Iranians living in Damascus headed for the embassy to vote for their country's presidential election. Iranian ambassador to Syria, Hossein Akbari, said that there are approximately 12,000 Iranians living in Syria, half of whom are eligible to vote. Meanwhile, Iranian nationals in the United Arab Emirates also headed to a polling station at their country's consulate in Dubai to cast their votes. Elsewhere in Asia, Mongolians are also voting today, with 23 parties contesting for parliamentary elections. Residents in the Mongolian capital of Ulaanbaatar are casting their votes at a time of growing public frustration. With so many contestants in the fray and ambiguity among voters on who to vote for, the citizens are getting informed and enthusiastic about the elections. After the major constitutional changes in 2023, this is the first major election of the nation. The major contest will be between the largest opposition group, Democratic Party, against the ruling Mongolian People's Party. Voting started on Friday at 7 in the morning and will conclude 10 p.m. local time. Azerbaijan will hold a snap parliamentary election on September the 1st, according to a decree by President Ilham Aliyev published on Friday. Aliyev, who has been in power since 2003, recently won a snap election, and his new Azerbaijan party is expected to maintain its majority. Critics argue that opposition figures face persecution, with several independent journalists and political activists arrested before the presidential vote, which Aliyev won with over 92% of the vote. Next, the presidential debate between Democrat Joe Biden and Republican Donald Trump on Thursday failed to impress viewers worldwide. While some expressed cautious support, others were critical of both the candidates. My colleague Benji Haya is in Washington, D.C. He gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Benji, a wobbly debate showing for Biden, would you say that?
Oh, to say the least, Tanvi. And now US President Joe Biden's allies are scrambling to contain the fallout from his staggering performance at the first 2024 presidential debate. He struggled to stem a barrage of attacks and, frankly, lies from his Republican rival Donald Trump. Besides hurling personal attacks on one another, the debate did touch upon the economy, immigration, foreign policy, and abortion rights. Take a listen.
They have is they're radical because they will take the life of a child in the 8th month, the 9th month, and even after birth. After birth, if you look at the former governor of Virginia, he was willing to do this. He said, we'll put the baby aside and we'll determine what we do with the baby, meaning we'll kill the baby. What happened is we brought it back to the states, and the country is now coming together on this issue. It's been a great thing.
Astonishing claims from the former president. Well, this is what President Biden replied on that issue of abortion.
It's been a terrible thing, what you've done. The fact is that the vast majority of constitutional scholars supported Roe when it was decided. Supported Roe. And that's this idea that they were all against it is just ridiculous. And this is the guy who says the state should be able to have it. We're in a state where in 6 weeks, you don't even know whether you're pregnant or not, but you cannot see a doctor, and have him decide on what your circumstances are, whether you need help. The idea that states are able to do this is a little like saying we're going to turn civil rights back to the states. Let each state have a different rule.
DD India's Caroline Malone was watching last night, and she joins us live. Caroline, some remarkable viewing, and there now are attempts to downplay the president's showing last night, but senior Democrats are expressing major concern. Will they mount an internal challenge against President Biden with just 4 months to go until polling day, or do they stick with their man and wait to see how it all plays out with Donald Trump's multiple legal woes?
Well, at this point, I don't think we can underestimate how badly that debate went for Biden. As you rightly point out there, they did debate a number of issues, but the lasting impression that would have been given to voters is that Biden was stalling, that Biden lost his train of thought and didn't appear as strong as he needed to in order to convince voters, a lot of them, to vote for him again. And what we've seen already is Democrats potentially talking about replacing him as a candidate. We even heard, from Vice President Kamala Harris straight after the debate, not calling for his replacement, but admitting that he didn't do a strong performance. We had a number of White House communications, former directors talking about how this really wasn't the best night for Biden. And even a former presidential candidate for the Democrats, Andrew Yang, who debated Biden in 2020, saying, "This is not the same man that I debated on the stage 4 years ago. It's time to consider a replacement." Now, the question is, can they replace the candidate at this point? And the answer is yes, they can, theoretically. What would need to happen, though, is that they put forward a different candidate at the Democratic Convention that happens in August. So they've got about 40 days before an August 7th deadline to declare all the candidates ahead of that actual event taking place. Biden already, though, has got 4,000 delegates. Those are shows of support in the primaries. It doesn't mean that they've committed to him, but he has, by and large, been the only candidate that has been considered up until this point. So the question is, who would be able to replace him if they decide to do that? Some of the candidates include, of course, Vice President Kamala Harris. She's struggled with popularity in the last few years, but she is a potential option and, of course, is already on the ticket. So that is a good place to start. Then we've got the governor of California, Gavin Newsom. He's been increasingly high profile and done a number of trips, including to China, where he's helped negotiate some climate change proposals on behalf of the Biden administration. So he has a track record there. Then we've got the governor of Michigan, Gretchen, who is a potential option. She is, of course, someone that has a positive track record as well and is well known as someone that was being considered as a vice presidential candidate in the past as well. The question is, though, are the Democrats going to go there? Because this is really unprecedented to do this so close to a presidential election. We know just over 4 months to go. If they decide to, they absolutely have to do it and get that name out there before August the 7th.
Caroline, thank you for taking us through what you said is an unprecedented state of play, and the next debate between Joe Biden and Donald Trump scheduled for September. But before then, of course, we have that Democrat Party convention, the Republican Party convention too, and Donald Trump's sentencing following his criminal conviction. Let's bring you some other of today's news. And EU leaders have agreed to nominate Ursula von der Leyen for a second term as European Commission President. At a summit in Brussels, the bloc also picked former Portuguese Premier Antonio Costa as the future chair of the European Council meetings and selected Estonian Prime Minister Kaja Kallas as the next EU foreign policy chief. The trio won broad backing, but right-wing Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni abstained from the vote on Ms von der Leyen and voted against both Costa and Kallas. Von der Leyen's nomination still needs approval from the European Parliament in a secret ballot.
I would plain and simply like to express my gratitude to the leaders who endorsed my nomination for a second mandate as President of the European Commission.
Well, for more on the story, DD India's William Denzilo, who's been keeping an eye on proceedings, sent us this report from the EU headquarters in Brussels.
Von der Leyen has certainly cleared a major hurdle, obtaining the backing from the vast majority of the 27 members of the European Council, those heads of government, heads of state from across the European Union. But now it is ultimately up to elected members of the European Parliament to have a final say. What Ursula von der Leyen needs to secure a second term as European Commission President is 361 at least out of the 720 seats of the European Parliament. Now, if we take into account her existing coalition of centrists, her EPP, the European People's Party, the SD and Renew, that amounts to around 400. So that should be, in principle, enough of the vote. However, members of even her own EPP party and other centrist groups have said that they are not going to support her for this second term. That means that Ursula von der Leyen needs to find some extra support, some extra padding on either side of the political spectrum. Now, that brings into question the relationship with Giorgia Meloni, Italy's Prime Minister and head of the ECR, the further right group in the European Parliament. And of course, she's very unhappy with Ursula von der Leyen's backing. So real question is, can Ursula von der Leyen secure enough support from other members of the European Parliament?
Elsewhere in Europe, French far-right party National Rally is on course to clinch victory in parliamentary elections. They're set to win as much as 37% of the popular vote. That's according to one opinion poll. National Rally was up 2 percentage points from the last publication of that poll, while President Emmanuel Macron's centrist bloc was seen reaching just 20% of the popular vote. In a tit-for-tat, National Rally leader Marine Le Pen accused Emmanuel Macron of humiliating people who don't vote for him. The Russian military on Friday claimed control of Vodyane, a village in eastern Ukraine, after pushing Ukrainian forces out of that settlement. Meanwhile, Russia's one of the largest majority-owned state banks was also opened in annexed Ukrainian regions. Now, imagine you're stuck in space and stuck there for longer than you might have thought. Well, two astronauts, Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore, have been on the International Space Station for weeks, yet their return home to Earth faces delays, postponed again to June 26th, and then beyond that for, well, we don't know how long. And that is because Boeing's Starliner spacecraft, which is supposed to take them back, remains stuck due to technical issues. And to make matters worse, NASA's urging everyone on the mission to take shelter in Boeing's Starliner spaceship after a Russian satellite broke into pieces and the debris came close to the International Space Station. Crazy stuff. Well, that's it from me here in Washington. Back to you guys in the studio.
Thank you very much, Benji. Benji Haya joining us from Washington, D.C. Still to come on this edition of DD India Global. International Crime Watchdog FATF Financial Action Task Force recognizes India's efforts to combat money laundering and terrorist financing, removes Turkey from its grey list, requiring special scrutiny. And Argentina passes major economic reform measures in President Javier Milei's first big legislative win in just over 6 months. We just don't bring you the news as it unfolds. We get to the heart of the matter.
We don't just present facts, we demystify complex social, political and economic events.
We break stories that shape the world's present and future because you deserve the truth.
I am Tanvi Taneja from New Delhi.
I'm Ollie Barrett from London.
I'm Nick Harper from Washington, D.C.
Join us on DD India Global Monday to Friday at these times.
Thank you for staying with us. You're watching DD India Global. I'm Tanvi Taneja. India has achieved a remarkable outcome in the mutual evaluation report conducted by the International Crime Watchdog Financial Action Task Force, FATF. India's mutual evaluation report in 2023-24, endorsed at the FATF plenary in Singapore, has positioned the country among the regular follow-up category.
To India, astounding outcome to India. And it's a significant achievement in that sense. India has also been placed in regular follow-up category, which is a distinction shared by only 4 other G20 countries. So it's a positive outcome for India as far as this FATF mutual evaluation is concerned.
Further, the Financial Action Task Force removed Turkey from its grey list of countries that require special scrutiny on Friday. The latest move came after an FATF team held meetings with the Turkish authorities to assess progress in addressing those concerns. The Paris-based body announced that Turkey has made substantial strides in enhancing its anti-money laundering and counter-financing of terrorism measures. Consequently, Turkey is no longer under the FATF's increased monitoring process. Now, in response to US State Department's 2023 Religious Freedom Report, India's Ministry of External Affairs said today that the report is one-sided and the projection of facts are driven by vote bank politics.
Human rights and respect for diversity have been and remain a legitimate subject of discussion between India and the United States. In 2023, India has officially taken up numerous cases in the US of hate crimes, racial attacks on Indian nationals and other minorities, vandalization and targeting of places of worship, violence and mistreatment by law enforcement authorities, as well as the according of political space to advocates of extremism and terrorism abroad. However, such dialogue should not become a license for foreign interference in other polities.
Now, in a survey conducted about the business expectations of German companies in India by KPMG in Germany and the Indo-German Chamber of Commerce, it was found that nearly 6 in 10 German companies are planning to increase their investments in India during the current financial year.
The confidence and the trust of the German business in India is growing really considerably. So we'll see, we saw in this survey a very incredible, growth of, willingness to reinvest in India, to expand business in India. And the second half of this year will be very busy because, first of all, we'll have intergovernmental consultations with the Indian side. The German Chancellor will travel to Delhi with members of his cabinet to sit down in this biannual exercise we have with the Indians, to sit down with Prime Minister Modi and his cabinet and develop joint programs, joint projects and a joint roadmap.
Staying in Asia, China has called for the building of bridges in the global economy as Beijing grapples with economic, trade and territorial disputes with neighbors and trading partners. Beijing now signals a desire for other countries to see it as a diplomatic heavyweight, even as other nations accuse it of economic coercion and unfair competition. Now we take a look at other stories making news around the world. The Israeli army released footage on Friday showing aerial strikes and tanks advancing into Gaza's Shejaiya region, sparking intense clashes with Hamas terrorists. The Israeli military described the operation as a targeted raid. Argentina's lower house approved economic reform measures proposed by President Javier Milei on Friday. The approval also included a fiscal package which reintroduced articles on income tax and personal assets that the Senate had previously rejected. UK police on Friday arrested 27 climate activists accused of planning to disrupt airports over the upcoming summer holidays. The suspects are part of Just Stop Oil protest group. They were arrested under a law which makes it illegal to plot to disrupt national infrastructure. And K-pop group 17 are poised to make history as the first K-pop group to perform at the Glastonbury Music Festival. The 13-member band will be performing on the Pyramid stage on Friday, where fellow stars including pop singer Dua Lipa, rock band Coldplay and the US's R&B artist SZA are headlining performances. And going back now to the Americas, where in the T20 Cricket World Cup, India advanced to the final after a gap of 10 years. The Rohit Sharma-led side registered a commanding 68-run win over England in the second semi-final match at the Providence Stadium, Guyana on Thursday. In Guyana, Akshar Patel dented England's chase with figures of 3 for 23, while Kuldeep Yadav picked 3 for 19. The 2007 T20 champions have set up a summit clash with South Africa, who outplayed Afghanistan by 9 wickets in the first semi-final. The final is slated to be played on Saturday. So staying in Guyana, the Kaieteur Falls, that are world's tallest single drop waterfall at an astounding 741 feet, 5 times the height of Niagara Falls. It is located in Guyana's verdant rainforests. DD India's Tapas Bhattacharya takes us through these awe-inspiring Kaieteur Falls.
We are starting this journey for Kaieteur Falls, and this is in Guyana. Guyana has a part of the Amazon forest also, so we will be going up there, checking out the Amazon forest and the Kaieteur Falls. This is the single largest single drop fall in the world. So we'll be giving you a sneak peek of exactly what it is.
They're going to head to the Ogle Airport with Jags Aviation. They're going to hop on that flight, 40 minutes in, we get to Kaieteur, and they're going to see the most spectacular flight, world's largest single drop waterfall.
So we have landed in the Kaieteur National Park. This is a small airstrip which has all the facilities for the small aircraft, which is, and Kaieteur National Park is part of the Guyana. Guyana has a bit of Amazon rainforest, and Amazon rainforest generally, we see more than 60% in Brazil, but Guyana also has a bit of that. Now we will take a short tour of the Kaieteur National Park and find out exactly why it is so famous.
This little plant that you're looking at just right here is called the Sonju. It's a carnivorous plant.
Carnivorous.
Yeah, it secretes enzymes and traps them with the small tentacles on the leaves, right?
Lincoln, Kaieteur waterfall is well known all over the world. Tell us more about this. I hold it.
Well, Kaieteur is the world singular waterfalls, and you can only find it here in Guyana, in the Putaro Seperoni area, region 8, Kaieteur National Park. And the color of the water get from tan vegetation and sediment, also the minerals.
You don't find any single drop waterfall in the world that has this width and this height, this sheer height of 741 feet.
741 feet?
Yes. So
and what is the width of this?
It's roughly 300 feet in width.
Indigenous tribe in Guyana are there from this Amazon?
Well, particularly from Guyana, we have 9 tribes, or 9 nations. Yes.
All right, so that's Mr. Washington giving us a brief description about this particular waterfall. This is one of the largest single drop waterfall in the world, bigger than the Niagara Falls that we all know about. With that was a session with Thomas Bhattacharya for DDI India.
So with nature's glory from Guyana, we wind up this edition of DD India Global. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. Connect with us on our different social media handles, Facebook, X, Instagram at DD India Live. And for those on the go, you can catch all the latest news and updates on our DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. So hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja from all of us here in New Delhi. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.